I am deleting this video on February 10th, 2026, which whenever you're seeing this is probably only a couple of days away. And this video is going to be probably one of the most valuable videos that you will find on the internet for becoming a creative strategist, or if you're just running it for your business, how to develop a really good killer creative strategy team. And I make that promise with full conviction, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll see that that's true. Now, inside, like I said, I'm going to be giving away a lot of free sauce around how to write ads, how to do funnels, and how to land clients if that's something that you're interested in. And I'm sharing more than I should. This is not marketing speak or hyperbole. I'm really sharing more than what my business partner will probably feel comfortable with. Okay, I told him I was making this video, but I did not tell him exactly what I'm putting in this video. Okay, in fact, I'm sharing more than makes me comfortable. And the only reason I feel like I can do that is because, like I said, this video will 1000% be getting deleted on February 10th, 2026, okay? Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because on February 11th, the day after I take it down, we're gonna be hosting our first ever Creative Strategist Ascension workshop, where we're gonna be sharing a bunch of different things, right? It's gonna be turned into a course that will eventually be sold for probably around $2,000, but one that you can pre-order right now for $497 for the first 100 buyers. It's gonna cover everything, etc. And you're gonna get tons of detailed SOPs and AI bots that will allow you to write all of this pretty much in a bundle, in a box, everything that you need to be successful as a creative strategist, both in terms of the ideas, the frameworks, the theories, and the examples you need, as well as every single possible tool that makes this so easy. We've been building this thing for the past 3 months. You're going to get all of that. Okay. And my aim is that you watch this, you see that there's so much good value that you're like, okay, I now understand how this is. I want to get the full comprehensive version, invest in the pre-order, and get access to all these tools that I can use to fulfill for clients going forward as much as I want. Okay. But if all you want to do is to watch this video and take notes, because I will be deleting it, I promise that this will be well worth the time and investment that you put into this. I'm going to make it as direct, streamlined as possible. Like I said, I'm really not holding anything back in terms of what I'm sharing inside of this video. And without further ado, let's kind of just jump in. The one thing I do want to mention is, in case you were wondering who we are, right? If it's your first time seeing me or first time seeing this video, my business partner, Mario Castelli, and I have sold a combined $250 million online with ads and funnels. And at least one of my VSLs that I wrote earned over $100 million for a client. So we have written both VSLs, text sales letters, ads, emails. We've been in the game for a long time. I've been in it for over 6 years. My business partner has been over it for more than 10 years. We have a combined lots of experience, pretty decent reputation inside of the industry, and lots of wins under our belt. And we just spent a lot of time perfecting our craft and also trying to figure out how to teach this. We run a community now with over 400 members. I'll talk about that in a second. Some of the brands we work with are people like V-Shred, Mind Valley, and Svelte Media. And we've worked in niches like pet, weight loss, memory, real estate, sports betting, fitness, BizOp, manifestation, mindset, joint, grounding, skincare, survival, and many, many more, right? Now, that's just our fact sheet, but the most important thing for you is to know how have we been able to help other people, both in terms of being creative strategists and in terms of executing their funnels and their ads at a higher level to increase performance. So this is literally just the last testimonials that I have inside of our Slack. We have a huge Slack with every testimonial that we get, and these are just literally the last ones that we've received probably over the last few weeks. So this is somebody saying, I joined Copy Coders, went from 12K a month to 106K a month in 90 days. Again, not promising anyone would be able to do that. That is a crazy number, but it's a pretty insane testimonial. I almost wish it was less unbelievable, but there we go. Here's someone, I've scripted 3 VSLs with your bots, which have brought in approximately $500,000 last year. Here's someone who used our bots, our AI marketing bots, the ones you get access to in this course, to get basically a 10x ROAS on Meta. Here's somebody talking about how he's going to close out December with $31,000, creative strategist. Here's someone who said they spent $3 million on ads in the last few months using our ad bots. Here's someone saying it's the best business decision I ever made. Within 1 month, I made twice the annual joining fee. Here's somebody, I did an interview on my channel talking about how he's basically scaled to $100,000 per day. Here's somebody else saying my income is 7x since this time last year because of Genesis, $2,000 a month to $14,000 a month. Here's somebody else saying closing for $7K a month, 8 advertorials and ads. Here's somebody else basically talking about how they improved their webinar show rate. So show rate was about 10 to 12%. Last time they got it to 24% show rate. Close rates were around 6 to 7%. So they basically almost tripled their close rate and doubled their show rate. And here's somebody else going through our methods talking about how he landed a $10,000 per month client on Upwork. Okay, so those are some of the things, just reasons why you may be interested in hearing what I have to say. And that's pretty much all I got. If you're interested in joining us for our workshop and pre-order our next course for 75% off, that link is going to be somewhere below. But I promise everything in here is going to be very, very valuable. Even if you cannot afford that, or at least it's not the right time for that, just watch this video. There'll be an opportunity for you to get access to this document, and I'm going to give you a lot of sauce. So let's just jump in. First thing is let's dive into writing banger ads. Again, a couple of testimonials about the ads we've been able to do. So some of the first things that you need to understand, some of this will be beginner level stuff and some of this is going to be very, very advanced, okay? I'm trying to give it all to you. In order to write really good ads, especially in the current ad environment, it's really important to understand awareness buckets, okay? There's tons of videos about this online, tons of people talk about it. I think there's a little bit of confusion in terms of what actually each bucket means and how you use it. But in general, most of the resources out there are pretty good. So you don't need to go too crazy. You have unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. Now, what you need to understand is that when you're thinking about ads to write, you're basically going to think about your entire market, okay? So your market is one big blob. Underneath that blob, you're going to have different segments, okay? We'll talk about this a little bit more, but I'm going to bring it up here because I feel like it's relevant. You have different segments. A segment is basically a slice of the market that you've decided is a good group to put people in. Okay, a segment is made up. There's no real segments. The segment is really, could be one person, it could be your entire market. But the reason we do segmentation is so we can talk to people in different ways, okay? The more that you segment things, you increase the likelihood of conversion because it's more particular to them. I mean, really, the perfect segment is one-to-one. That's personalization, right, at scale. Currently, right now, there are some tools and ways that you can continue to do this, but a lot of the ad platforms are rewarding how personalized you can get with your messaging. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is how can I group these pools of people to be big enough that it's actually worthwhile for me to invest time to create different ad creatives for them, but also narrow enough that I create a lot of velocity and a lot of throughput in terms of my conversions because I'm speaking specifically to them. Now, when you define a segment, the things you want to focus on are the core desire. This can either be pain or gain, right? Something they want or something they want to get away from. Other people talk about this being towards or away. Okay, that's the type of desire that they have. It's also determined by constraints. So constraints you can think of in terms of core objections, but typically when you're talking about a segment, you're usually talking about things like values and maybe beliefs. So for example, if you were selling, there's someone in our community who sells a cleaning product, for instance, and actually, sorry, he sells a fertilizer, but it works for the cleaning product example as well. But he sells a fertilizer. His fertilizer is a plant fertilizer. It's completely organic, completely whatever. Now, in his market, he has a segment of buyers who they're shopping for a specific type of fertilizer, right? That is organic and non-toxic, et cetera. There are other people who just want their plants to grow as effectively as possible. They don't care if it's Miracle Grow or something else, okay? So it makes sense to divide those two segments divide those people into two different segments. Okay, so that way when you're writing ads, you can write ads to really highlight the fact that, hey, this is non-toxic, this is safe, this is organic, and then you can write ads to the other segment of the market where you're just talking about the effectiveness, okay, and the efficacy. And then, of course, you can split each of those into more and more segments. But constraints in terms of things like values and beliefs, things that block people, is a nice way to think about when you're trying to group your segments together. The next and last area are just basically identifiers, okay? I'm going to put demographics here. So demographics could be maybe you have men, maybe you have women, right? Maybe you have young men, maybe you have older men, right? So you can group it by age. Maybe you group it by cultural background. Maybe you group it by geography. Maybe you group it by identifiers. Do they identify as copywriters? Do they identify as creative strategists? Do they identify as D2C brand owners, okay? Again, there's no perfect answer to this. Like the theoretical perfect answer is just every single person is their own segment and you could talk directly to them. But when we talk about marketing overall, we're going to group these into clusters, okay? So you're going to look across these things and group those into segments. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to break down each of those segments into different buckets, right? So for example, let's say that you're marketing to, let's say there's beginner copywriters, okay? Let's say you're doing professional copywriters who want to become creative strategists. I'm talking about for myself. And let's just say that this is like newbies who want to become creative strategists. And let's say that these are solopreneurs who want to write their own ads. And let's say the final segment that I might want to target would be business owners with teams, okay, who want better throughput with their ads. Right? Those are all the type of people who I would talk to. And if I were going to segment and create ads, basically what I want to do is make all those segments, like I have here. And then for each segment, I want to basically group them into different buckets of awareness, like this. Okay, so I have 4 different segments. I have 5 different buckets, and that gives me 20 different slots where I can start to develop new creatives and new ads that I want to target. Okay, now of course you're going to have to use some judgment in terms of trying to figure out, hey, let's say I'm writing 100 ads. How many ads do I write for this segment or this segment or this segment, right? It may, for instance, be the case that the biggest majority are professional copywriters who are becoming creative strategists. Or it could be, hey, this segment right here is maybe not the biggest, or it's the second biggest, but they have the most money. So this is the most important one to target. So maybe I put more attention here. And it may be the case that, hey, a lot of the objections live in the solution aware, so maybe I want to put even more attention here. Okay? So hopefully you understand what we're doing. I know we jumped right into the deep end. Like I said, I'm trying to give you as much sauce as possible. But we're talking about writing ads. The first thing you need to understand are things like we're talking about segments, awareness levels, the anatomy of an ad, and a concept called copy blocks. This is the foundational stuff that you need to understand for ads to be able to make effective advertising, especially in the landscape that we have today. So hopefully this makes sense right here. You want to basically take all the segments of your market, and then you want to divide those into different awareness buckets, okay? And that'll give you all the possible slots of ads that you can then target, all right? Now, the next thing that you're going to want to do is understand a very, very, very important concept called cache, right? So cache. What does cache stand for? So cache stands for concepts, angles, styles, and hooks, right? This is the way that I like to look at an ad when I'm breaking it down, and the way I like to think about creating different ads together. Okay, so a concept is basically just the raw idea. So let's say, for example, I want to sell to this product here. Okay, let's say the raw idea is why creative strategy is a good biz model in 2026. Let me just say that that's like an in-demand skill. How about that? Why creative strategy is an in-demand skill for 2026. Okay, that would be the raw idea. Now the angle, if the concept is the what, the angle is basically how you express that. Okay, so an angle. A lot of people talk about angles in the same way as talking about hooks. I like to reserve talking about hooks for very specific language in the first opening sentence or 1 to 2 sentences. That's what I consider a hook. An angle is the overall frame. Okay, so some examples of angles. You could do a paradoxical question. You could do a warning. You could do a conspiracy. You could do a big benefit, you could do a story, etc. There are a list of a bunch of angles, and in fact, because I'm so generous, I'm going to tell you some of the top 12 ad concepts, or ad angles is really what it should say, that you can use down below. Okay, so then you have different angles. Now what's cool about the cache system is once you take a core idea, you can multiply it, right, or wrap it in one of these different angles. So for example, let's say that we wanted to do a pop quiz angle, right? So pop quiz, which AI skill is the most lucrative in 2026, right? I'm still talking about this raw idea that creative strategy is an in-demand skill, but I'm framing it in terms of a pop quiz. Let's do another one, paradoxical question. Why? I have to think about this one. This one's a little trickier. That's why we got the bots for it. Paradoxical question. You could do, why is it that some copywriters are losing their clients in 2026 while some are making more than others? And I would go through and talk about that's because creative strategy is the actual most in-demand skill, right? Warning. If you don't know this skill as a marketer in 2026, you are cooked, brother, cooked. Okay? Again, I'm not saying that these are the best angles of all time. I'm just saying this is a really nice frame. You take the raw idea, you multiply it times the angle, and look, if we have 12 angles, which I'm about to give you right here, and you have one concept, you now have 12 different ads. That's pretty amazing, right? And again, I'm just talking to professional copywriters or maybe even the newbies, okay? I'm just talking to that bucket right there. The next thing you have are styles. So styles are basically, you can think of them in terms of the creative. So is this going to be a text-based ad with a static image, right? Or is it going to be a video? And then with each one of these, you have tons of different styles that you can play around with, okay? This is an ever-evolving landscape, especially with AI. There's tons of new styles that are emerging all the time. But you could do, stick figure images. You could do UGC. You could do green screen. You could do whiteboard. You could do et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. The other variable in terms of creative is the spokesperson. So you could test like, what if we have the founder? What if we have this UGC character? What if we have a man? What if we have a woman? That's a little bit more advanced. In terms of the static images, you have things like, ugly ads, which are basically just text-based ads. You have things like people holding up signs. Okay, that's another sort of image. You can have meme-style ads. You can have animation-style ads. You can have kind of like a product breakdown hero image. So there's a lot of things that you can do for the styles. And what you'll notice is like, hey, let's say that we took this pop quiz. We could then turn it into tons of different styles of static images, right? Or pair this core concept with a lot of different styles of images. And then we could also do a UGC. We could do a green screen. We could do a whiteboard. We could do something like that, right? So now we're taking the 12 from one idea. We created 12 ideas. And for that 12 ideas, we can create anywhere from 30 different variations just by focusing on mixing up the style, okay? And the last thing, of course, is the hook. Now, there's a lot of training and stuff on hooks. It's going to be outside the scope of this video, unfortunately. But the purpose of hooks, or the thing to pay attention to for hooks, is like, this is the place in copy where the very specific language matters, okay? The way that I think about hooks, the best thing that I use for hooks is to really understand this concept of copy blocks, okay? This concept of copy blocks is going to help you write really compelling hooks, which is why I want to talk about it in just 1 second. Let me pull it up. Okay, so let's talk about copy blocks. Now, there is a video on my channel. If you go and click the link and then you look at the most viewed channels, it's typically the most viewed video that I have. And it's basically talking about how I write $1 million copy with Lego blocks or something like that. That's a deep dive into copy blocks. And then somewhere, maybe even below this video, I'll put another description. It's a $27 product, super cheap, very in-depth. Many people have said it's one of the best copywriting trainings that they have. It's a really simple, powerful concept, and it's just one that I developed for myself internally. It's so simple that you can remember it, and I use it all the time. And like that one little investment or whatever, just the investment of time, whether you're going to watch the video or buy the product to do it faster, like that once you have this mental model, it makes looking at copy literally like you're kind of seeing into the matrix, which sounds hyperbolic, but I've heard from so many different marketers and people who've told me that this is the case, and I've experienced it for myself, okay? So what is copy blocks? Copy blocks is just a very simple framework for breaking down all the different mechanics inside of copy. Like I said, check out the video, the free one, or check out the product if you're interested in more, but let me give you a quick overview while you're on this channel. So inside of copy blocks, we basically break everything down into 6 different blocks. So there's pain, there's promise, there's proof, there's curiosity, there's constraints, and then there's conditions, right? Now, for each of these blocks, you can basically give them a color. So for pain, we'll give it red. For this, we'll give it green. For proof, we will give it blue. For curiosity, we will give this one yellow. For constraints, we will give this one gray. And then for conditions, we will give this one purple. Okay, pain is self-explanatory. This is the thing they don't want. Promise is what they do want. Proof is any kind of proof. There's about 22 types of proof. I have a video coming out soon that will talk about the types of proof. Then you have curiosity. Excuse me, got a little bit of a cough. Then you have curiosity, which is basically typically your mechanism or any sort of curiosity, something interesting that's going to catch people's attention. Then you have constraints, which again is a form of objections, but it's deeper than objections. Objections are typically external things. I mean, everything is internal, but in general, objections are external, like, oh, I don't have the time, this is too much money, I have to do this, or what about this, external factors. Internal ones are things like, well, this goes against my values, I don't believe in myself, et cetera, okay? Like, am I going to be able to do this? So constraints, is really about minimizing the time, the effort, all that kind of stuff. That's what constraints are. And then conditions are things like urgency, scarcity, qualifiers, like who this is for, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's cool is like once you have this concept in mind, you will understand that almost all good headlines, and again, oftentimes very good hooks, will incorporate some, if not all, of these different copy blocks. And it will help you to be able to look at a headline like this and say, okay, this looks like it's pretty good, I guess. And you'll be able to turn it into something like this, which typically is better. I'm not saying this is the best headline in the world, but it's a little bit better. Okay, and the way you get there is by doing copy blocks. So for instance, how to go from struggling freelancer this is basically your pain to landing high-paying clients and making 10K a month. That's your promise. Very simple, effective headline. Pain, promise. Sometimes that's all you need. Okay, but if we look at something like this, again, I'm not saying it's the best headline in the world, but we can see that we have proof elements. We can see that we have curiosity in the form of a mechanism. We also have our pain. We also have our promise. And then we have our constraints. Okay, if we wanted to go even more, we could just say, down here, something like that, right? And that would be an example of conditions that we could add to this product, right? This is nothing mind-blowing. I mean, this is stuff that's been taught over and over and over again, but it's a really, really useful framework because, again, when it comes down to writing hooks, a lot of the best hooks are going to incorporate these types of copy blocks, okay? That's why we're talking about them. So again, to kind of recap on where we're talking about making banger ads. In order to make banger ads, it's really important for you to understand concepts like your segments, right? So you understand how you can segment your market. And then you also really want to understand your levels of awareness, right? So you can kind of create awareness buckets. Each segment has a different awareness bucket. That gives you however many segments you have times the 5 different awareness buckets, which gives you basically a set of different types of ads that you can then go and create, okay? Then with each one of those buckets, you can basically create ads using this cache concept, right? Which again stands for the concept, the angle, the style, and the hook. So hopefully this makes sense. If we're going back to my example of professional copywriters, we could look at professional copywriters who are completely unaware of being a creative strategist, right? And then within that, we can talk about all the concepts that apply to someone who is unaware. They're a professional marketer or copywriter, but they're unaware of what a creative strategist is. And hey, we can go through and we can talk about all of this stuff, right? And then we can take that one idea in messaging and multiply it times all these angles, take that and multiply it times all these styles, and then use our copy blocks to craft ultra effective hooks. That's really what we're after, okay? Let me show you some of these effective angles. By the way, this document and any other documents is going to be available if you opt into my email list below. Like I said, I will delete this document, okay? I will get rid of this document for good on February 10th, okay? So if you want it, now is a good time to opt in. Now, these are the top 12 ad angles that I've seen that work over and over and over again, okay? We're putting together a list of 100 of these that are going to be revealed in our workshop, but you can get very, very far with just these 12 concepts, okay? It looks like I included a couple extra ones for you. So, for example, you have paradoxical questions, you have surprising culprit, you have pop quiz, you have metaphors and analogies, you have 0 to hero story, you have lists, top 5 warning signs, you have insight-based ads, you have what X does to X, you have what happens when, authority plus claim, big bold claim, quickest and easiest way, common object, and testable proof. Okay? So, for example, if we took our same idea, why create a strategy is an in-demand skill, you can start to multiply it to all these different things, right? You could hold up an object and say, here's why this, water bottle is going to tell you about the most in-demand skill in whatever, and create a connection there. Testable proof, okay? Some of these may not always apply, but a lot of them will. What's the quickest and easiest way to reach $20,000 as a freelance marketer? It's to learn how to be a creative strategist, okay? Very simple stuff. This just kind of gives you a framework to break some of that stuff down. Cool. And then what I would say is, when you're looking at an ad using this framework of cache, I want to show you an example of what that looks like, okay? So here we go. As a dermatologist, I've spent 24 years studying skin at the cellular level, okay? And what I found recently changed everything I thought I knew about aging skin. Let's say that that's our hook. So now we kind of have our hook. And it's also going to give us a sense of what the angle is, right? Which is basically, I'm an authority, and I'm going to give you some sort of insight, okay? So it's authority plus claim. That's the angle that we're going to take here. Then I'm going to say, all right, well, what are all the concepts that I see in this ad? And the concepts are typically the main idea, which is that this right here. That's the main idea. That's the concept. And we can look at other concepts, like here. We have our 2025 ranking with a full breakdown. We also have this idea that this thing renders most cleansers and serums useless. So these would be all the concepts that we see in the ad. In terms of the angle, we already said that the angle for this ad is authority plus claim. The style, this is a video ad. It looks like it's coming from the founder, okay? And again, we can't see the actual video, but we could just imagine it's kind of a talking head version. And the hook itself is going to be, as an expert, I spent blank, blank, blank studying skin at the cellular level. Okay? So now we can break down this ad and we can say, all right, well, what if we took this same concept, like this concept, and we tried a different angle around it, right? So, pop quiz. What's the number one thing that makes your cleansers completely useless? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? It's actually none of those things, right? In fact, it has nothing to do with the quality of your cleansers. In fact, most cleansers actually work quite well. The only thing that's blocking them is they don't have this, get rid of this biofilm, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because you need to be able to see the anatomy of an ad. The same way that copy blocks allows you to see the anatomy of a piece of copy, right? And allows you to kind of move it around like Legos. This is the higher order version of that, where you can look at an ad and say, oh, I see what concepts are working. I see what angles are working, what styles and what hooks. The reason why is because what's going to happen is you're going to create an ad. It's going to be a winning ad, or you'll get a bunch of winning ads, and your company will be like, hey, here's the winning ads. I need you to write more winning ads. And you're going to be like, I don't know. Let me just throw a random idea. But when you have the cache system, it's super easy. All you do is look at the ads, and you say, okay, what are all the concepts that are in here? One of these concepts must be working. Right? At least one of these concepts is resonating with our market. So let me look at all those concepts. Then I'm going to say, okay, let's look at the angles. Maybe they really just like the angle, right? Then I'm going to say, all right, let's look at the style. Maybe they just like the style. Then I'm going to say, let me look at the hook and see if I can kind of use those. So then I have a task at hand. I can say, what happens if we take all of these winning ideas, or what I think are the winning concepts, and I just basically put different packaging on them? Right? I take a different angle, a different approach, same message but different approach, or same message but different spokesperson, same message but different style, same message but different hooks. Cool. What if I take the angle? Maybe they just really like this angle of a pop quiz for whatever reason that's resonating with this market. So then what if I go in there and I start plugging in different types of concepts that I have, right? Different things that I could put in there. Or maybe they just really like the style, etc. So when you understand the DNA of an ad, it allows you to generate more variations of winners. It helps you to diagnose when an ad might not be working, right? And again, it just kind of helps you to see into the matrix and give you a little more granularity on what you're looking at. That's why I think this concept is so powerful. And if you don't even have winning ads, it's extremely powerful because you just say, all right, what are all the concepts I have? What are all the angles? What are all the styles? And when you multiply these together, you literally end up with hundreds of thousands of possible ideas. You will never run out of ad ideas ever again, okay? Cool. So let's take a breath, and we're going to keep moving on. So the next thing that's really, really important is for you to understand the source of ads, right? I'm going to tell you something that is a little bit nerdy, but it's going to help you a little bit more. So one of the most important things that you can do is, well, let me come back to that in a second, actually. Okay? We're doing it live. Let me come back to it in a second, and let me land this concept for you here. So I want to talk about the most important sources of ads. It's really, really good to have a mental model and a stable of ideas for where you could pull winning ideas for ads, okay? Because a lot of times you're going to run into a block and you're like, all right, I need more different ad ideas and things like that. The other reason why it's important to know different sources of ads is it increases the likelihood of you sort of walking your way into more winners. So what do I mean by this? Well, if your only strategy is to swipe competitors, you're constantly like a dog chasing its tail, right? You're never inventing anything new, which is fine. Swiping is very, very powerful, but you're never really inventing anything new, okay? But what if you're swiping from competitors and you're really good at reading the comments on your ads, finding interesting comments, and turning those into new ads? Well, now you have kind of two plates spinning at the same time. And between those two plates, you're more likely to get different types of winners. And once you get those winners, using everything I just showed you, you can start to create iterations and variations and get even more winners multiplying faster, right? Because you're kind of fishing in different ponds. If you're only fishing in this pond, you're only going to get fish who are in this pond, right? But if you're fishing in a couple different ponds, you start to increase the likelihood of you finding new territory and new messaging that's going to resonate with people. Now, doing new things is not always the best strategy. Sometimes you just want to find the one thing that works and go hard on it, okay? That's why, ads is just one component in business, one component in a working funnel. But in general, especially for a lot of these companies in the environment we have now, there is a high demand for new creatives, and this is going to allow you to source those new types of creatives. Okay, so these are the sources of ads that you should pay attention to. When I go to sit down and write ads, let's say I'm like, okay, I'm going to write 10 ads for this company. Typically what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, let me make sure that I'm hitting ads for the different segments. Let me make sure I'm hitting ads for the different awareness levels. And let me make sure I'm pulling ad ideas from different sources, right? That way I make sure that I'm kind of mixing it up a little bit. Now, the sources of ads are swiping. So swiping is one of the most important ones. You can swipe from direct competitors. You can swipe from adjacent competitors. It's very, very powerful. The second one is just using proven templates and formats. These are, the least creative, but they're very, very reliable, right? When you swipe, you're typically swiping ones that you already know are working. Somebody else spent the money to see if it's working. So just swipe it, okay, within reason and within legal reason, et cetera. The next one is you're taking proven templates and formats. People have been studying copywriting and marketing for so long, and there are just tried and true things that stick in people's brains. Use those, okay? All right, I'm giving you 12 inside of this video. The next one is organic posts. This is insanely powerful. All it means is that you go on Instagram, you cook your algorithm, or TikTok, you cook your algorithm to reflect something in your market. So for example, if you're in alternative health, you're gonna follow a lot of alternative health people. You're gonna just cook your algorithm, you're gonna start swiping, and then whenever you go in your feed, you're just gonna keep swiping, see a video you like, you're gonna click on the whoever posted the video, you're going to look at the average of types of views that they have, and you're going to ask yourself, is the video I just clicked on an outlier, right? If they typically have 50,000 views on their videos, does this one have 250,000, right? So you're looking for outliers. And if not, you just keep scrolling in their profile until you see an outlier. You click on the outlier, you look at the overall idea, both in terms of what's visually on the screen, what's in the caption, maybe what's in the comment, but typically it's whatever's audio, visual, or the caption, and you say, okay, this hook is resonating. Is there a way to take this core idea, almost copy it verbatim, and then bridge it into selling the rest of my product? Very, very powerful. You can get winning ads that way all the time because the market's already validated that that idea resonates with them, okay? The next one is using what I call internal vectors. A vector is just a pattern inside the ad. It's very similar to the process that we did here, where we broke it down into concepts, angles, styles, and hooks. The only thing is it can get a little bit more granular than that. So you can start scrolling through here and be like, oh, this is interesting. I spent 24 years studying skin, right? And maybe you see another ad that really mentions his credibility, and another ad that mentions his credibility. And you're like, you know what? All these ads are mentioning his credibility, and a lot of other competitors don't really have that credibility. So what if we just did an ad that was just a crazy major proof dump on his credibility, and we ran with that and see if that works? Because maybe people are responding to that. Okay, so internal vectors is just a fancy way of saying you're looking for any of the patterns in your winners or oftentimes your losers, and you're asking yourself, okay, what happens if I take this little element and just expand it as much as possible? Okay, it's usually a way to find really good winning ideas. The next one is to go from, instead of focusing on the messaging first, you focus on the style and the creative first. Okay. Now, typically your messaging is the bigger lever compared to the actual style and format. But what's interesting is, especially now with AI and all these tools, there are new styles that are emerging all the time. So like the apology letter is a big one right now, right? Where every brand is posting, I'm apologizing, right? And it's actually them just like, apologizing for how good their product is, right? So that would be an example of a style. Now, what's cool is you can just say, okay, now that I want to do an ad in that style, then you can create the messaging after that. Or, stick figure animations, for instance, are pretty popular right now, decently popular. So you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to do a stick figure animation because that's a style people are resonating with, what could I do to fit this in it, right? So instead of starting from the messaging and then using the style to support the messaging, you're actually starting from the style itself and then figuring out what messaging would support that, right? Because the style itself is the thing that has traction. Hopefully that makes sense. The next one is using comments and research. Very, very underrated. Just looking at comments, looking at what has the most engagement, looking at comments on organic posts, looking at comments on, good old fashioned, roll up your sleeves and go on Reddit, read the books, look at comments and things like that. Always tons of ideas that you can pull from there. And the last one is what I call coverage and matrix. This is being a little bit more autistic and or sophisticated in terms of the types of ads that you write. All that means basically is you figure out what are all my segments. Cool. For each segment, what is all my awareness levels? Cool. For each awareness level, what are all the core concepts that I could answer, right? And then for each of those concepts, what are all the angles I could answer? And then for each angle, what are all the styles I could do? And for each style, what are a bunch of different hooks? And eventually you literally end up with hundreds, tens of thousands of ads that you can use. And, not all of them are going to be perfect or the first ones that you should test, but it's going to give you like so much abundance in terms of the types of ads that you could focus on, right? So that's very, 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 very powerful. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about unaware ads. I have a whole video on my channel around unaware ads that you can watch it where I dive deep into a lot of things that I'm going to share here. But I want to kind of cover this in brief because unaware ads are so important. If you remember back to the levels of awareness, we have unaware ads, problem aware ads, solution aware ads, product aware, most aware. unaware ads and kind of that space between unaware and problem aware ads is such a huge opportunity. They're the hardest ads to write. They require the most skill, the most ability to create find really curiosity invoking hooks, to do your research, etc. And a lot of them are going to be losers, but the ones that hit, the ones that hit and the ones that are able to scale, they're typically able to scale like pretty well, and oftentimes they're the best performing ads in your ad account. And so being able to master these is a really, really powerful skill. So I'm going to talk about a little bit, focus on how to write these types of ads. So there's two things that I want to mention. So one of them is every sort of unaware ad, in my mind, typically has a curiosity element and then what I'll basically call a reference, okay? These are kind of similar to copy blocks in terms of curiosity is curiosity, and reference typically refers to either pain or promise. But in general, every single unaware ad is going to have these two elements together. Okay, I'll show you an example real quick what I mean. So let's look at this one. What onions do to your neuropathy? It's not the craziest idea ever. And in fact, you may not even call this an unaware ad, but let's just say that for now, for explanation's sake, it is. So you have what onions do to your neuropathy. So in this case, the onions part is the curiosity element. I want to know what onions do to my neuropathy. And then this part here is the part that's actually relevant to the audience if, of course, they're in the pain market. Okay, so it's really important to kind of understand those two elements and how they work together. Okay, so the curiosity element is typically what stops the scroll. It's anything that is sort of interesting, a pattern interruption, something like that. So you'll have things like authority references, NASA, Harvard, Nobel Prize, Amish, monks, etc., tribes, historical references like things that happened, conspiracies or cover-ups, paradoxes, surprising culprits. Any of these things here typically are just drenched in curiosity. Anything that's, like I said, anything that's exotic, anything that's a type of authority, those are the kind of things that you're going to want to look for. The relevance is what makes it feel like it matters to them. Okay, so what matters to them? And you could have existential level things, right? So, what onions do to your health. So existential sort of broad things that are relevant to your market. You can get more granular and talk about mechanisms. So if they care about inflammation, if they care about blood sugar, for instance, you can talk about conditions, you can talk about sensations, okay? So overall, the main thing to pay attention to is most unaware ads are going to have some sort of curiosity and some sort of reference, okay? So let me break this down a little bit more. The line between unaware and problem-aware ads typically gets blurred. So what I mean by this is unaware ads are not just pure curiosity, because pure curiosity, one, doesn't tell the algorithm who to go and serve this ad to. That's number one. And number two, the people looking at the ad don't really know that it's for them. So even though it's very broad in terms of just, wow, here's this really interesting idea, it's not specific and it's not relevant enough to actually drive people to want to take action. So you have to find a balance between pure curiosity that's going to reach a wide majority of people and relevance, which is going to get the right people to actually take action. Okay, so this right here is kind of an example of it. We can have this whole sort of, what onions thing here, in which case this is the curiosity one. And then we can look at all these different conditions. So what onions do to you is relevant to anyone who qualifies as a you, which is anyone, right? What onions do to your body is a little more specific. Now we know it's related to something that's happening in my body. What onions do to your health is even more specific. What onions do to your blood sugar, more specific. What onions do to your neuropathy is the most specific. Somewhere in here, we actually kind of transition from what I would consider more of an unaware style ad to something that is more of a problem-aware ad, right? What onions do to your neuropathy is probably, you would put that in the problem-aware category. And it's not like we need to be so clear and so anal about, wow, this is problem-aware, this is unaware. Again, these are just categories that help sort of organize the ad concepts that we make and give us some sort of something to hold on to kind of organize our thoughts. But it's important to kind of look at this, because what you'll notice, and what I typically notice with a lot of ads, is that if you lean too far into just pure curiosity and make it too broad, a lot of times they'll flop. And what you need to do is you actually need to tighten the relevance to make sure it's more applicable to your target audience. Okay, so in this is the reason why I call unaware ads, there's a type of unaware ad that I call basically the straddle ad. And all that means is it's straddling that line between a pure unaware curiosity soaked ad and something that's a little bit more specific to that market, which is more of a problem aware ad. So you can kind of see, maybe somewhere here, right? Somewhere here is where that line is, right? So anywhere here, between what onions do to your health, what onions do to your blood sugar, is going to find that perfect sweet spot between high unawareness, right? Meaning it's broad, it's curiosity invoking, and something that's specific, all right? Hopefully I explained that well, and hopefully that makes sense to you. Again, these are just abstract theoretical things, but it's important to kind of have some sense of what we're talking about here, because it's going to help you to be able to tweak winning ads, to find winning ads, et cetera. Okay, so that's typically one type of unaware ad, is it just straddles this line. Okay, the next one, and by straddling this line, it means basically just go and look at any kind of curiosity factor, right? Just go and look at what NASA said. If you're selling a skin cream, okay, just look at all your ingredients, look at all the mechanisms of action, look at anything it interacts with, like is it working with collagen, is it working with certain dermal levels, and then just run a perplexity search or a ChatGPT deep research prompt and be like, tell me anything NASA has to do with XYZ. What does NASA have to do with collagen? Or this? In any way that you can find a way to tie in something NASA did with something related to your product, you now have opportunities for great hooks, right? In 1928, a NASA scientist discovered the real reason why collagen, whatever, but then people lost that study. It's like, well, I want to know what that is, right? That's just naturally curiosity invoking. Even if I don't care about collagen, I kind of want to know about a NASA conspiracy and cover up and a discovery around skin that was lost to the ages. But especially if I'm in the skincare market, that thing is going to really, really drive me forward, okay? So all you got to do is find those curiosity elements. I gave you a list here. Throw this list in AI and say, give me more ideas like this, and then pair it with some sort of relevance or reference factor, and then boom, you have tons and tons of unaware hooks. Okay, the next one is basically what I call a reference reframe. Okay, this is tending more into the pure unaware category, and basically all it is you point to something that is in somebody's experience, right? So this could be a symptom they notice, some kind of behavior they do, some kind of action, or something that you sort of introduce to them, and you're like, hey, this is actually a source of a problem, right? So one of the classic examples of this would be in the pet niche. And again, a lot of unaware ads that are kind of in this reference reframe typically fall into new emerging categories more than existing ones that have like lots of sophistication. But you could say, for instance, is your dog eating grass? That's a sign of X, right? Something bad. This would be a good example of an unaware ad. So in this case, what we're doing is we're taking a reference, right? Is your dog eating grass? This case would be like a behavior that they're noticing. And then you're basically saying, hey, that's actually a problem. Okay, so this would be a classic example. The other one you could say would be, check your dog's ears. If it looks black, that's a sign of X. The only difference here is that instead of pointing to something that they may have already noticed, like, oh yeah, I can recall that my dog's eating grass, you're basically saying, introducing something, like check your dog's ears. They probably never checked their dog's ears and paid attention to it, but now you're saying, hey, this is kind of a new problem that you're introducing. Okay. Do you wake up at 3 a.m. to pee? If you need coffee to wake up, your mitochondria are already dead. That ringing in your ears and tinnitus is the first sign of this. Okay. So pretty cool. I kind of want to point out something here, which is, do you wake up to pee? That's the curiosity element. And then we're basically saying that's high cortisol. So going back to this one here, our curiosity element is this idea, this question of pointing to a symptom or behavior, waking up to pee. And then we're connecting it to basically some sort of mechanism that they're already trained to know is bad. Okay, I know I'm getting super, super autistic and super, super nerdy with this, but I just want to give you a bunch of examples and just kind of approach it from different angles, because it's really hard. Most people who learn unaware ads, they learn it by just exposing themselves to tons of examples and kind of get an intuition for it. And most of the material out there is pretty limited in terms of actually explaining what's working behind the scenes. So I'm just trying to give you a bunch of different ways so you can start to connect with it. But at the end of the day, just pay attention to tons of examples. Just try to do something that's super high conspiracy, like, here's why this tribe did this. Here's some ancient thing. Here's some conspiracy. Anything that's curiosity invoking is really what you're paying attention to. Okay? And hopefully that answers a little bit of how we can start to approach unaware ads. Now let's go a little bit deeper. The next thing is you want to start talking about your creatives. Okay, so when it comes to creatives, you basically have static images, and then you also have videos. When it comes to static images, again, there are so many types of static images, it's kind of crazy, but here's a list of some of the most common ones. So basically you show the product and you have a headline. That's like the most standard one, typically for a product aware or most aware ad. Comparison, a split screen, a native news. So basically, you've seen these type of posts on Instagram or whatever talking about some breaking news, but now you just relate it to your product. A meme, a collage, an ugly ad, which is basically just basic text. Infographics are really, really powerful, especially with Nano Banana. It's great at making infographics. Testimonials ads, a notes ads, which basically is like showing the notes on like your iPhone, and then it's a tab. A sign ad, which is somebody holding up a sign. A product breakdown, which is similar to the product plus headline, but basically you're showing the product and showing all the features and aspects, almost sort of like a diagram. A note from founder, this could be like the apology letter. Showing a scientific study, so kind of what looks kind of similar to native news, but you're just highlighting a specific study. Or animation, if you go to weather.com or anywhere where you'll see native ads, you'll scroll down, you'll see a bunch of like kind of cartoon animation style things around symptoms. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, although I'm pretty sure that you could run almost any ad account simply using these static ads and everything else I showed you, and you would be fine. But there's going to be new formats that emerge. You're going to find ones that start trending and new ideas, and you can kind of copy them that way. Now, when it comes to in-feed static image, this is a very specific type of image, which typically pairs really well with unaware style ads. Although, to be fair, you can run it with any style ad that you want. These are ads that really don't look like ads. Typically, they're just pictures of something. There's no text on the screen. They don't really look like promotional material. They look like something you would see in feed. Okay, and you can break these down into different categories. The King Kong of this category is anything that looks ultra real. So anything that was actually taken with an iPhone. I mean, I've heard of many people who spent money and millions of dollars on ads, and their best performing creatives is just something they shot with their iPhone, right, inside of their house. I saw an anecdote the other day, Hormozy breaking down a funnel, and he was like, just take all of it was like a couple with a coaching business. He was like, just go into your camera roll, find all the pictures that you guys have together, and run all of them. Okay, it looks super, super real, and this is such an easy way to just get creatives, and then you just pair them with the ad copy. That's basically it. The other categories, though, that kind of work, even though they start to kind of push the boundaries a little bit, but people have success with them, is anything that's really niche specific. So anything that your market and your market alone would understand. If it's in business or like AI, there's certain things that people, N8N, whatever, certain tools or platforms or things that they would notice. If it's a health market, there's certain sort of devices and medical devices and reports and things like that they'll identify with. Anything that really creates that strong like identification is really, really powerful. Anything that's super weird and bizarre, I mean, go look at, like I said, weather.com or anywhere where they host a bunch of native ads, like Taboola, stuff like that. You will see the craziest looking creatives on there. They've been perfecting this art for so long, and a lot of it is just really weird kind of stuff, like a fruit you've never seen before that doesn't look real, and AI is great at creating these, obviously. The next one is anything that's gory. It's a pretty strong way of saying it, but it's basically anything that is, surgical or a cut or bloody or whatever. This is obviously where you're starting to kind of get into compliance territory, so you want to be mindful and adjust according to your brand guidelines and everything else. And then, of course, there's anything that's sexual, right? This does not mean actually like sexual stuff. Obviously, you're not running that. But anything that's sort of suggestive. A pretty lady, a handsome guy, someone who's shirtless, whatever, right? Something that looks kind of suggestive is obviously going to stop people in their tracks. But adjust according to your brand, adjust according to your risk tolerance, all that stuff, okay? I'm just saying this is stuff that I've seen work. So there you go. Here's another list of like some other static ones. But really, here we have different video styles. So again, just going back to what we talked about up here. Let's say that you break down all your segments, break down your awareness levels, then you go back and you break down your concepts, your angles, and your styles. Here's a list of all the type of video styles that you can do. Whiteboard ads, presentation, green screen, reaction videos, text on B-roll, cartoon animation, ugly videos, founder style, faceless, talking head. The list, goes on and on, at least to number 29. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of confidence. I know I went really fast, but this kind of breaks down everything you need to know about ads. Get your segments right, get your awareness levels right. Figure out your copy blocks, get your beliefs and things like that. I'm gonna give you one more piece of sauce on here that maybe I shouldn't give you, but whatever. I like to over deliver. I like to use this when I think about concepts. Right, we have a master list of concepts. I think it's about 200 or 300 different concepts, and we have a bot that you put in your information that gives you like every possible concept you can imagine for your ads. Okay, so like you're done with this. But if you want sort of like the easy way to figure this out, just like raw ideas, I like to think of it in 5 different categories. So I like to think of it like this. So basically, what is going to get attention? So I just say, okay, for my specific segment, let's say it is AI, people interested in AI, creative strategy, D2C. I'm like, what is everyone paying attention to kind of on a broad scope and then also very specific to my niche? So, I mean, things people are paying attention to right now is like Epstein files. I'm probably not going to do an ad about Epstein files, so we can nix that. But I'm just saying, like, what is mass market kind of in people's minds, right? Bad Bunny won the Grammy, okay? And I'm kind of looking at what has persistence, meaning what's sort of a cultural moment versus what's like in the news cycle. You know, Bad Bunny is just won the Grammys, awesome. You could probably do something there, but like, how many people really know about him and how long is that going to last in the news cycle, et cetera? But I'm looking at what are people paying attention to? Well, anyone interested in AI is probably paying attention to Claude okay? They're probably paying attention to Claude Code. They're probably paying attention to what else? What else in terms of AI? I mean, those are the big things in AI. For creative strategy, there's different types of tools that many people would be aware of. I mean, just the idea of being a creative strategist is kind of emerging in the meta. Andromeda, of course, is not really anything new, but it still has some sort of weight because a lot of people talk about it. So anything that fits on attention, I can make ad concepts around that, right? So I just ask myself, what is this segment paying attention to? And I can create entire ads and angles specifically around those blocks of attention. The next thing I can do is I can look at beliefs. What are all of their beliefs that they have? Now, beliefs that typically fall into a bunch of different categories. Inside of our programs and our workshops, we have it all broken down, and we have bots that will map out all your beliefs. But typically, you just run into AI and be like, hey, here's my segment. Here's this. What are the primary beliefs they're going to have? It's going to give you the top 10. Done. Then you say, how do I undo these beliefs? We also have a framework inside of Genesis and a bot inside of Genesis and the workshop that we're going to do that unwinds those beliefs, because there's a very specific way that you take a belief in somebody's mind and then you unwind that belief to open up a new possibility for them, which is extremely powerful. It's very simple, but extremely powerful process. Again, just ask AI. If someone had this belief, how could I convince them into a belief that's more congruent with what I'm trying to sell them? Done. Constraints, we already talked about this. Remember, constraints are constraints that happen based on people's past experience, based on their values, based on their identity, based on their beliefs, based on whatever else. And then typically it's around the big three, which is money, time, and effort. So you just ask yourself, how can I come up with concepts that show why this is a good investment, right? Maybe it's not cheap, but at least compared to the other alternatives, it's an amazing investment. How can I show how easy, how much little time this takes, right? How can I show how little effort this takes? Okay, and then of course you're looking at values and identities and things like that. Then you go to desires. What's the core desire that they want? And just go a few levels deeper. Okay, they want to make money. Why do they want to make money? Well, because they don't want to be. They want to want to be free. Okay, what does that look like to them? It means they want to be able to basically pay for a big meal for their family and friends without having to look at the credit card bill. Why? Because that's going to give them some sort of status. Why do they want status? You know, whatever, to fill the hole their mommy and daddy left in their heart. And then you just calibrate to the level that you want. So you look at all the different desires they have. You go levels deeper. You look at the dimensional versions, the pictures you can create. Awesome. Now you can create stories around that. You can create visuals. You can, paint the picture for them. That's amazing. Same thing with the pain. Are they trying to get away from a pain? Well, what's the nightmare scenario that they're afraid of getting? Right? Is it dying? Is it having a heart attack? Is it being broke? Is it being replaced by AI? What's the fear and the thing that they're running away from? Again, calibrate this according to your compliance and your brand guidelines, but there's always a tasteful way to express any of it. Okay, you can be less direct or more direct. It doesn't really matter. Okay, that's the other one. And the last one is excuses. What excuses do they need to make to themselves in order to buy? Right? Why this is a good investment? Maybe what they have to say to a partner. All the reasons why they have to act now. Okay, so this is a really powerful framework in order for to come up with those types of concepts, right? And again, I'm just going to reiterate this because I really want to make sure that it lands. And sorry if I'm repeating myself, but a great man said we need to be remembered more than we need to be taught. So I'm going to remind you over and over. That's how you're going to learn. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at what are all my segments. Okay, we talked about how to find those. Then you say, okay, within my segments, what are all the awareness levels? Okay, that's the next bucket. So however many segments you have times 5 different awareness levels. Then you go, okay, for each awareness levels, I want to figure out what are all my key concepts. And you can use this ABCDE framework to help you find the most important concepts. Then you say for each of those concepts, what's an angle? You could use the 12 angles I gave you, okay? And so basically for each concept, you can approach it in 12 different ways. Awesome. Now for each angle, what am I going to do? Well, you have different styles, okay? I gave you a bunch of different image ideas, and I gave you a bunch of different video ideas. Multiply all of these together, boom. You're already at 1,000 plus different ads, so you should not really be able to run out of anything. And then for hooks, just use the copy blocks to make sure your hooks are dialed in. Done. Okay? Now you can do this by just kind of walking through this process and using AI, or which is basically what I would call the bottom-up approach. because you're kind of building it in a more modular fashion. Or you can say, let me use all these sources and take a top-down approach, which is let me make sure I'm looking at my swipes, let me make sure I'm looking at organic stuff, I'm looking at internal vectors, right, the patterns inside the ad, I'm looking at comments and research, et cetera, et cetera. If you do these two processes simultaneously, right, taking a more sort of modular, methodical, autistic-like approach of kind of building everything bottom up, and you're taking the sort of Chad, just rip it, swipe, top-down approach, between those two, you're going to find the winners. You iterate on the winners, boom, you're done. You have winning ads. It's not that complicated. It should be quite simple, okay? Hopefully this gives you some sauce. I mean, this is sauce. Whether you decide to use it is up to you, but this is the same process that I've used and taught to other people, and it works like gangbusters. So that's how you write winning ads, okay? Hopefully you are getting some value from this, and believe it when I say the workshop we're doing is way more in-depth and literally gives you the tools to hit the buttons to spend millions of dollars a month on ads, okay? I didn't have to say it. Who had to say it? These guys, right? Wherever they're at. Spending a lot of money, winning ads, etc. That's all I got. I do hope you join us on this workshop because the workshop is a banger. We are turning it into a course which will be sold for $2,000. It is sold for $497. I like marketing and I do marketing, but I never lie and I don't do things that are hypey. You can look at all the testimonials for our workshops. We always over-deliver on all of these workshops. People always get amazing value, and this is hands down the most valuable thing ever, especially because we're going to talk about writing banger funnels. I was talking with the team today who's helping me build these bots, right? We're building them all together, and I was amazed at the type of bots that we built. I mean, just let me scroll down a little bit and see if I can even find where these bots are. It doesn't really matter. We'll look at it in a second. But we have bots for everything that I shared up here. And for the funnels, we have a bot that will write advertorials, a bot that will write listicles, a bot that will write top 5, a bot that will write product pages, upsells, downsells, checkout pages, caveman-style pages, proof pages. It'll do a deep research dive. When I say there are 30-plus bots, these are hardcore, like very, very powerful bots that you will get access to just by investing into this workshop. So anyways, I'm not trying to sell you too much. I guess I am, but let's go back to value. We're talking about writing banger funnels. Again, here's the proof that we just know how to do it. There's plenty more versions, but these are just the most recent ones that I wanted to pull. Okay, so let's talk about funnels. Funnels is everything that happens after they click the ad until basically they're going to go to checkout. Okay, typically it's what sits in between your ad and then your product page. So the first and the most classic one is advertorial. Okay, I'm going to give you all the different types of advertorials, but I'm going to give you some best practices real quick. These are all pretty basic. I think these are self-explanatory. I'll just pause it, take a screenshot of that if you want to read it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The most important principle that I see, because again, inside of Genesis, we look at ad copy all the time, including tons of advertorials. And we're always looking at like, what's the biggest feedback that I would give for most people who do advertorials? I give this feedback a lot for copy and marketing in general, but it's especially true for advertorials, which is you need to commit to a subtype. So the writer has a vague sense of I'm writing an advertorial, but they have not committed to a specific type. If you really want one of the best books on advertising or marketing or copy ever written, it's The Ultimate Desktop Copy by Clayton Makepeace. And he has a whole chapter in there. I believe the topic is called themes. It's around chapter 7 or 8. This is basically the same idea, committing to a subtype or a theme, right? Think of it like a movie genre, right? When you go and you watch a horror film, you expect beats and a feeling of a horror film. Right? When you go and watch a comedy, you expect that. Now, every now and then, someone innovative comes out, and they blend styles and genres together, right? A black comedy, a dark comedy, right? Horror and action, whatever. But in general, they're still committing to a very specific genre. Same thing with an advertorial. You want to commit to your subtype. Again, the conceit of an advertorial is to make it not look like advertising. It's to make it look like this is a piece of news. So make it newsworthy, make it interesting, and commit as if this is really you writing a piece of news and make it as strong as possible, okay? So these are the subtypes that we have. Breaking news and discovery is one of the most powerful ones. But breaking news and discovery, think about that. If you were to write an editorial for a piece of breaking news and discovery, it better damn be worth news. It better be newsworthy. It better be interesting. It better be a paradigm shift. There better be a story behind it, science. Commit to it. David versus Goliath is basically we're the little guys and we're taking on the big whatever, big shoe, big farm, big pharma. It doesn't really matter, okay? Paint the picture. I'm the good David guy, right? I'm pure, I'm young, I'm innocent. Goliath is this evil behemoth, and we're going to take it down. Be on our side. Expose and scandal, like it's very scandalous. Someone did something bad. We're going to show you. Social proof, it's this viral moment. It's the most viral thing that ever existed. Really lean into whichever these subtypes are and write it as if you really are just telling news, okay? Again, here's a little infographic. It basically points out the same ones that I just shared. These are the different subtypes right here. I guarantee if you just use AI is great at writing advertorials out the box. We have amazing bots that will do this for you. But if you just say, go to AI and be like, hey, I need an advertorial, show it an example and be like, I want to write it with this whole frame, and then pop in this stuff here. If you get access to this doc, which all you got to do is, sign up to the email list below, boom, you're done. All right. The bottlenecks that advertorials solve. Again, I feel like this is pretty generic and pretty straightforward. So just screenshot that if you want. But advertorials are great if they can increase lift, increase conversion. But really, it's also for consumption and education, right? If you need to kind of get a point across to make them willing to buy the sale, that's what you're going to be focused on. Okay, so that's advertorials. That's really all I have on advertorials. Now, there also are other funnels besides advertorials. Things like, I have to apologize for my voice too. I'm doing the best I can. There are other things besides advertorials like listicles, top 5 pages, caveman pages, jump pages, social proof pages, quiz pages, and comparison pages. Quiz funnels are ripping right now. Quiz funnels are great for creating both engagement, and you're doing a lot of pre-selling by asking them questions. Comparison compares between you and a major competitor. Social proof is just basically like, here's a dump of all the proof, all the reasons to believe. We have a page like that that's doing quite well for one of the companies I'm working with. Caveman pages are basically just a big dump of questions, and it's like caveman style. Like, what is this? How does it work? Who made this product? What is it? Boom, but breaks it down. Top 5 is, here's the top 5 things, top 5 products in XYZ category, and then here's number 5, okay? Let's look at some examples. Obviously, of course, I'll leave these on here, but these are some different examples of advertorials that we have. I'm going to see if there's any that I highlight. This is a little bit more of like what I would call a bridge page, right? It's really just to get people onto this VSL, doing a little bit of pre-selling. Here's a quiz funnel that's absolutely ripping. I mean, you've probably seen tons of videos around this guy or seen this guy. This would be kind of another example of like advertorial, and it would be specifically following like local, relatable, first person, how I easily corrected my bunions and relieved my foot pain. So it's kind of first person POV. This is another one, reasons why. This would be like a listicle, 5 reasons why. Boom, boom, boom. This is an example of a caveman page, right? See how just easy it is to read, and it's just question, question, question. Obviously, a lot of visuals and graphics as well. Super, super powerful. Cool. So those are the examples of the funnels. Like I said, in the training that we have coming, it'll basically write all of these for you and do it quite well. You just pop in your information. You have all these different funnels. And there's some science and kind of understanding, all right, well, why would we need a caveman page versus a listicle page, right? Some of this is intuition. It's not a perfect science. Some of it is, oh, I saw a quiz and it's working, so let's just do the quiz, right? It looks cool, so let's test it. And some of it is like, all right, this is a product that needs a lot of education, so let me do a caveman page that will answer a lot of these different questions. Or, hey, there's a big believability factor. Let me just do a major dump of proof. Okay, and then you got to kind of sequence these together. Sometimes you have different stages together, and you have to test everything ultimately. Okay, so let's also talk about product pages. Okay, so product pages are basically how you sell the product. So let's look at an example here. And there are a bunch of different elements to it. But typically what you want to pay attention to for product pages is this. Copy blocks are king, especially above the fold, right? So the most important part for the product page is this whole section here, right? This is basically your headline and then all of these little elements on here. Okay, so like end your back pain and sciatica, that's a pain copy block without surgery, right? That's constraints in 15 minutes a day. Awesome. This breakthrough. Triple fusion device, that's your unique mechanism, your curiosity block, decompresses your spine and rehydrates your disc from home. This is kind of like pain promise. Decompresses your suffocating spine in 30 seconds. Here you see a promise. Here you see a constraint. Forces dried out discs to rehydrate like sponges. Dried out discs to dehydrate is kind of actually a constraint, a curiosity block because it's a mechanism one. And of course, it's kind of embedded in, pain or promise. Here's pain, kills the root cause, ends years of failed treatments and wasted money. It's a mixture of benefit and constraints. Here we have 60% off before we sell out. That's a conditions block. 90-day risk-free trial. That's another condition one. Free shipping from U.S. warehouse. That's another condition one. Not available on Amazon or eBay. That's another conditions one. As seen on, we have tons of proof. Here we have tons of proof. And we also have conditions up here. So hopefully you can see that if you just really get this cluster done really, really well using copy blocks. Okay, sorry, my cough is just getting worse and worse. So I'm going to try to reconnect from where I got before. So copy blocks are keying, especially above the fold. Top performers consistently layering copy blocks in their above the fold section. So you're looking for clear outcomes and promises, pain points, curiosity mechanism, proof, constraints. We want to elevate our strongest blocks above the fold. Otherwise, we risk our prospects never seeing it. A lot of brands bury really persuasive points they should be making earlier. We're not explaining above the fold. We're establishing early decision momentum by answering these questions. What's the outcome and promise, the pain, the mechanism, etc. We're giving our prospects emotional permission to continue down the page. That's basically it. I'm going to show you this real quick. My business partner wrote this, and this is an example. Obviously, it's not an e-com page, but you can see, like right here, there's tons of built-in proof, there's built-in scarcity, there's built-in promises, there's built-in everything that you're going to get, right? Covering everything from here, proven systems, swipe files, 75, whatever. Same principles applies, whether it's a digital product, an info product, or a coaching offer like this, or it's something that's more specific like this. Just stack all your best stuff really, really early on. That's it. Okay? So let's keep going. For product page, once you get this above the fold section done here, and again, I'll give you examples. You can just kind of click through the examples to see the layouts. Once you have that stuff figured out, then basically all you do is instead of selling prospects, you think of everything below the fold as removing resistance, which means you need to identify the resistance your prospects would have. A lot of this is product and market specific. It's your job to figure out where prospects sit in their current beliefs. What are the beliefs you need to shift? Some of these sections could include UMP, which is the real cause behind the problem, UMS, which is the unique reason or features that allows your product to solve the problem, credibility sections, tangible outcomes and benefits, envisioned use, which basically means speed of results and outcome assurance. So you just walk them through the changes they're going to experience. Who it's worked for, so social proof, how easy it is to use, and then product-specific constraints like taste, safety, convenience, looks, etc. So we can look at this. This is like a vape replacement. Again, you'll see a lot of those copy blocks earlier on. A lot of graphics, a lot of other things in here, right? This one is a little bit interesting. Okay, but you can kind of piece through there. Again, if you want access to this page, just sign up below. I'm only going to have this available until February 10th. Okay, it's going to be on the thing that gets delivered to you. So just be aware of that. And then for advanced tactics, when it comes to doing this stuff, is I find it's really, really helpful to build modular copies. So what I mean by this is like typically this is good for ads as well. Is when I'm working with a company, I'm going to figure out like what is a piece of copy that just goes through all their proof points, right? Like, these studies showed, dogs. I'm using a grounding example for a company I work with. So like these studies showed dogs and babies love it. Used by NFL athletes, triathlons, and NASA, right? So I basically stack all these types of proofs together, and I can put it into a little block of copy that's like a module, and I can put that on any funnel I test. I can put that in any bit of ad or any type of ad that I need, and it's like a pre-written bunch of copy. And I do that with things like proof. I'll do that with things like metaphors for mechanisms is a pretty good one. Another good one to have is basically price justification. So how do you justify the price, right? And typically you do that by comparing it to other things, et cetera. It's pretty powerful. And then, of course, you also have these 22 types of proof. So I give you access to this document on here. In here, you're basically going through all the different types of proof that are available. And I'll also kind of break down how you can use some proof manipulation. Okay, actually, that's not for public view, but you guys got to see it. But you can kind of look at these 22 types of proof right here. Okay, so let's keep going. Now I want to talk about how to get clients on demand, right? If you were here for the ads and funnels, that's everything we have on the ads and funnels. Hopefully you found that valuable. And I want to talk now about how you can get clients as a creative strategist, okay? Just to show you, this is Cosman, somebody I work with, and, he basically closed out December with $30,000. Here's someone that, went from $2,000 a month to $14,000 a month. Here's someone closing it for this. Here's someone else doing this. I mean, just recently I was talking to somebody on my team. He was not doing creative strategy. He was doing a slightly different service that we show people how to do. And he just closed an $18,000 deal with a client. So it's pretty powerful. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to share with you, and let's just break it down because it's really quite simple. So the first thing is mindset, right? Don't skip this section. I know you want to skip this section because everyone just kind of leads with mindset, and it's all the same bullshit. This is not the same bullshit, okay? I do a lot of mindset stuff, and I've worked with freelancers. I know the very specific mindset things. So don't skip this because literally this is 80% of the work. And I know that sounds hyperbolic. Everyone says that, but it's just fucking true, okay? So number one is that you're not good. If you are not skilled, you're gonna have trouble getting clients. That's it. So many people are just struggling, always trying to get clients, and they put zero effort into being actually good. I don't know how else to say it. I get passionate about it, but I don't want to get too emotional right now. Just get better. Use my resources, buy the courses, buy the whatever. I don't care if you buy my course or somebody else's course. Just don't suck. You have to be good. Okay. Number two is you suck to work with. Typically, sucking to work with means that you're not a person of your word. That's basically what it boils down to, which means, hey, I'm going to get this thing done by X date. You don't get it done by X date. And then second one is you don't communicate, right? Hey, I'm going to be late. Hey, I'm going to do this. Hey, I'm going to do that. I am very, very aware. If someone is late to a meeting with me, I don't want to work with them, like even a minute late. Like I want you to be on time. I want you to communicate. I want you to deliver everything when you say you're going to. That's what it means to just be a normal person to work with. Then all the other personality and being cool is extra, but just get those basics of being a person of your word. I promise, I talk to freelancers all the time who are like, why don't I have clients? And it's like, bro, you're actually talented. I've told people this. I would send clients your way, but I know that you're not a person of your word, so I cannot recommend or refer clients to you. If I feel that way, how many of your clients who have fired you or worked with you, they don't feel comfortable recommending you to somebody else? Boom, you've probably lost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars simply by sucking to work with. So it's a pretty big issue. Number three is that you're a pussy. Again, I say that in a hyperbolic way, but it's kind of true. This doesn't really affect your ability to get clients. It affects your ability to make money. People just undercharge themselves. They continue to work with bad clients. They don't stand up for themselves. They don't create boundaries. They don't present themselves in a way that commands respect. It's very, very important if you want to continue to make money that people see you as a partner and give you a level of respect. Number four is more subtle, but it is very, very strong, which is that you're egotistical and unaware. Typically, this manifests as someone who's been in the game for a few years, but they don't want to take the steps that it takes to get clients. So they're like, oh, because I've been in the game for this many years, I should be at this level. But, for whatever reason, they haven't done the prerequisite steps. They haven't started. They haven't done whatever. And they don't want to go back to basics. And a lot of things that I'm going to tell you is going to go through one ear and out the other. You're like, this does not apply to me, even though I'm going to tell you this applies to you. For example, I'm going to tell you to go on Upwork. I don't care if you've made $20,000 per month. I don't care if you've been doing this for 10 years. If you want more clients, the first thing you should be doing is going on Upwork. Let me show you this example from Steve. Steve may be egotistical, right? As we all are to a degree, but he's not unaware. So for example, I resisted doing the Upwork parts of the protocol from the freelancer client Avalanche. When I saw others in Genesis winning solid projects, I swallowed my pride and got to work. Okay, he admitted it. I didn't have to say it. Within 2 weeks of seriously pursuing work on Upwork, I secured a deal with a company that serves enterprise-level companies that's likely to be worth $8,000 to $11,000 per month in revenue to my business. Done. That's it. So this is really, really big. Don't be egotistical and unaware. It typically means you're hard to learn with, or you're excuse me, you are not good at learning. Basically, you resist learning and you resist doing the actions that you need to actually take because you feel like it's going backwards, when in reality, you're already backwards. Okay, that's important. And number five is inconsistent and or wrong expectations. I talk to people all the time. They're like, hey, I applied to this job, or I applied on Upwork, or I did whatever. And I'll always be like, how many are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I've been doing 5 per day. And I tell them, hey, pull up your Upwork, because I know they're lying to me. And they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't do one today. I did one yesterday. I did 3 that day, and I did 4 that way. And then I did 5 on one day. And I tell them all the time, look, on Upwork, you need to apply to 10 jobs for every 1 response that you get. That's a response, not closing a deal. So 10 applications, you'll expect 1 response if you have everything dialed in, and you should expect to close about half the deals that respond to you, right? If you use all the processes and you're optimized. That means basically 1 out of every 20 proposals you send, you should be able to get. Okay, now that's a really like strong number. For some people, it's less than that, but that's about the standard of what I would recommend. So when people are saying, hey, I've tried Upwork and it doesn't work, and they've only applied 8 times, I'm like, well, if I told you it takes 20 applications before you get a deal closed, and you only applied 8, how many should you expect? And then they're like, oh, 0. So I'm like, just more volume, okay? People are looking for reasons why these things don't work, and of course they get scared that they're wasting their time and not putting in the effort. But that's business, that's life, and just take my word for it. I will be the first to say when Upwork stops working that don't do it, okay? So just pay attention to me. As long as I'm saying it's working because it's working right now. All right, if you struggle with any of these, one thing I recommend is that you take this test here. This is not the end-all, be-all, but it's going to give you a little bit of self-awareness. So what I would say is I would just literally copy and paste the transcript from YouTube. Tell AI, hey, can you just isolate everything that this guy said about the mindset component? Awesome. Then you're going to take that, and then you're going to take your positive intelligence results. You're going to put it in there, and you're going to say, hey, I struggle with, and then you're going to tell me, which ones do you think you struggle with? Is it 1 and 4, 3 and 5? And then you'll say, can you tell me about the patterns to this? Can you give me recommendations on what I need to do? I want to be a creative strategist and have success. These are my mindset blockers. It's not going to take you all the way, but it'll start to open up a little bit of awareness, which should ultimately help you if you're willing to make that change. Okay, that's the mindset component. Let's talk about some other big principles before we break it down into tactics. The master equation that you need to know for any kind of freelancing is you should essentially be turning your volume into skill, your skill into proof, your proof into leverage, and your leverage into freedom. Typically, when people are struggling to kind of grow their business as a freelancer, it's because something in this chain is broken, right? They want, for instance, they want their proof, but they can't get proof because they're not actually good, right? So they're not actually getting results, and they're not putting in the volume to get there, okay? Or they're really, really skilled, right? They're really, really good, and they want to have leverage, but they haven't done any work documenting their proof. So they can't really negotiate or bring anything to the table to get a really good deal or a good rate because they don't have that, right? Or maybe they have good proof, but they haven't figured out how to leverage that proof. So just pay attention to this chain. It's really, really important. It gives you a roadmap. If you're just starting out, volume. The only way you're going to get good is massive, crazy amounts of volume. Take the biggest number you can think of how much volume you need and multiply it times 10, and that's your goal. The example I always use is when I started out in the game, I was like, I don't know if I'll even be good as a copywriter. I don't know if I'll be able to make it work. So I'm going to work on 100 client projects. At the end of 100 client projects, I will give myself the ability to make a decision on whether this is right or wrong. Okay? It was around like project 20 or 30 when I started to make actually some good money. Okay? But because of my mind, I was just like, I'm going to check it off, check it off, check it off, check it off, check it off. That's how this thing worked. Okay? The next thing that you need to understand is you need to understand the importance of agency. Okay? So typically your income scales with the level of agency you have in an organization. Task level people get paid the least, owners get paid the most. So agency is a function of how much authority and how much accountability you have. People want to get paid more, but they don't want to do the actions of one, being an authority, so taking responsibility for the decision. Look, you're never going to make money in an organization if you're not the one making decisions. So if you find yourself in a situation or a setting where someone else is making the decisions, you are not going to be able to really grow in that role to a big degree because income is going to scale with agency, which is going to scale with the type of authority that you take. On top of that is accountability. If you're making the decisions, you are also accountable. Okay, if you write an ad and it doesn't work and it's not directly, you don't get any accountability for that, that's a sign that you're not in a situation where you actually have potential to get income. Okay, these things require risk, but this is actually what you want to consume more of because this is what's going to allow you to scale and make more money. Cool. All right, let's talk about some other things. Now, before we get into tactics, let's just talk about the meta framework. The amount of clients that you get, right, and keep to a degree, right? This stuff is here, how you get clients and how you keep them. How many clients you get is really a simple formula. It's how many units of outreach, so how much outreach do you do, cold emails, applications on Upwork, et cetera, times your conversion rate. So I can't find clients usually means A, you aren't doing enough outreach, or B, your conversion rate sucks. Okay? So, if you have inconsistent and wrong expectations, if you're egotistical and unaware, typically that means that you aren't doing enough outreach. Okay? And if you're not good or you suck to work with, a lot of times that means your conversion rate sucks because you don't have a good reputation or because you're actually not that good. So let's fix those things together. The first thing you want to figure out is how do I increase my conversion rate? This means that I have the highest likelihood of any single time I come in contact with someone or outreach to somebody, I have a high likelihood that they're actually going to want to pay me money. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, Your conversion rate basically can be summed up with this acronym here, POP, P-O-P. POP stands for your positioning, your offer, and your proof, okay? And proof is by far the most important. So let's talk about it. This is the type of proof that you want to get, okay? The harder your proof is to fake, the more valuable it is. So typically, this is the level of proof that you want to get. First thing is a resume. Every single person on earth has a resume. I was born, good. Just make up some shit on there. You have a resume. Voila. Awesome. Okay, that's table stakes. From there, you should have samples. It's free to create samples. Find a company you want to work with, write some samples using everything I said. Now you have samples. Okay, it's fake in the sense that it wasn't really tested, right? But you should at least have that. If you don't have these things, what are you doing? Next one is certifications. Down below, underneath this video, is a $27 product. I think there's an order bump or an upsell. I kind of forget the flow, where you can basically take a certification. I think it's an order bump. It's an extra $7 or whatever. You take a test. It's a legit test. I spent a lot of time making it. It's not easy to pass. You have to actually get it correct. And you get a certificate, and now you are Copyblock certified, which is actually nice. And there are tons of certifications that you can take. And whether people really understand or know what these certifications are doesn't matter. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 certifications that have some validity, some whatever to them, it's going to make your profiles and make your outreach a lot better. Okay? Again, it's still only level 3, but at least get that, right? For example, I'm going to do a certification for creative strategist, which I will talk about on my email list, another reason to opt in below, and you will get certified there. Okay? Number 4 is testimonials. Again, you can still fake testimonials, especially with AI. It's a little harder to fake testimonials from known businesses and brands. And a testimonial is a testimonial. You know, a lot of people have testimonials from Tony Robbins or Hormozi, and they worked with him. They worked in his organization or whatever. They worked with him 15 years ago, and they're still leveraging that. Okay, a testimonial can be valuable, but it's still not the most valuable, right? But we're building these things together. So everyone should have these, whether you have clients or not. Once you get clients, you want to focus on your testimonials, right? The next thing you want to do is you want to get a track record. This means tangible, chunky numbers. You have to solve this constraint in your business. People will tell me, oh, my client won't let me see data. I won't be able to do this. You need to figure it out. Find a way to have the hard conversation. Find a way to work with the companies. You need to get a track record. Your business is dependent on it. My ad was able to spend $250,000. I had the top performing ad for this. I had that. I had that. From there, you can turn those into case studies, right? This is more of a narrative, right? Instead of just, hey, I had an ad that did this, it's, hey, I came into this account, I was able to get 5 different winning ads, I took them from this to this, right? Now you're telling a story and you're wrapping these track records, either multiple or single ones together, but you're putting it into a documented case study, really effective for cold email and cold outreach. From there, the highest form is what I call a blue chip client. The example is, my business partner Mario worked with VShred. I've been on calls where we talk to people, and he's like, my business partner is like, yeah, I did this, I did that, I did that. And he's like, oh, I also worked for VShred. I did all their marketing for so long. When people say that, when he says that, people's eyes are like, oh my God, and they lean in and they want to listen to what he has to say, right? I have another person like Cosmin. Cosmin has worked with big brands like Spartan Hair and other ones and whatever. When he mentions those businesses, literally, they don't even look at his shit. They're just like, okay, you work with these businesses? Cool. Like literally, it's that straightforward. He's told me that so many times. So this is like the cream of the crop, is to get these trophy clients, these blue chip clients that you can then leverage to get more clients like them. Okay, but typically you can only get these blue chip clients by doing a lot of outreach, being very sophisticated, and also having some of this stuff built up. Okay, if you have this kind of proof, it's going to make your conversion rate go through the roof. So focus on it. The next one is your offer, how you structure your offers. Even as a freelancer, you are basically an offer owner. You are the offer. So you want to structure your offers together. There's typically 4 offers you want to pay attention to: free offers, entry offers, expansion offers, and premium offers. A free offer is a free offer. It's actually valuable. It's not bullshit. It's not some fucking AI lead magnet ChatGPT bullshit that you spun up together. It's actual value that's tangible. It's time. It's whatever, but it's free, right? And that gets people excited and creates engagement. The next one is an entry offer. An entry offer is something that's like an in and out job, okay? It could be, hey, I will write you 20 high converting ad scripts. Typically, I charge $250 per ad script, but what I'm going to do is, because it's our first time working together, I will give you 20 different ad scripts for $400. That's basically, $20 per ad script. I never do this with clients, whatever. Like, you make an irresistible entry offer and you frame it as like it's very small, right? So it doesn't take you too much time. It's low commitment on their part, so they're not like, oh my God, I'm going to have to like test this guy's funnel and do all this other extra work. It's an in and out job for them to experience working with you and see the quality of what you perform, okay? Once you have your foot in the door, then you have your core offer, a retainer or something like that. And then you have premium offers, which are basically high-touch consulting or whatever. You can use these just to get more money, because some people there's always going to be a small segment of your market who wants to spend more money. And it also acts as a decoy price to make this more palatable, okay? That's it. That's all you got to know. Done. Prepare your offers that way. Okay, the next one is your positioning. The important thing to understand is you always have positioning. Okay. People say, oh, I don't have positioning, but that's impossible. If you exist in time and space, you have a position, your positioning just sucks. So the formula for positioning is who you help plus who you are plus what outcome you're trying to achieve plus how you do it plus why now. So you can transform I'm an email copywriter to I'm a lifelong personal development fanatic who helps high-ticket coaches double their book and call show rates by implementing a 72-hour trust acceleration sequence because we're in a trust recession and old methods don't work anymore. Okay, that's all these things together. Now, this might be a little wordy, a little mouthy. You may not say that all at once, but in through your sales process or on your portfolio or whatever, you want to communicate these ideas together, which is way better than I'm an email copywriter. And if you put it all together, this is low conversion rate. I'm an email copywriter. Here's my samples. I'll write you emails for $5K a month, right? This is your positioning. It's bullshit. This is your proof. It's bullshit. This is your offer. It's bullshit. Compare that to this. I'm a lifelong whatever. I work with names like Tony Robbins, Alex Hormozi, and Luke Iha, right? Standing shoulder to shoulder with giants to generate an average of over $6 million in extra revenue, right? We have case studies and we have blue chip clients. If you're interested, I'll do a free 10-minute Loom audit to find gaps in your current system. Now I'm like greedy. I'm like, free 10-minute Loom audit from this genius. Like, yeah, hook me up. Done. Okay. Obviously, it's not easy. Proof is hard to get, right? It's hard to fake. That's why it's valuable. But now this gives you a target for what you're going to work for. Okay. And again, follow this equation. Volume into skill, skill into proof, proof into leverage, leverage into freedom. Let's keep going. Okay, now your outreach. You need to just be applying like crazy. Even the best conversion rate is going to be like 5 to 10%, so just keep that in mind. Always be overbooked, so you should always be always be over-delivering for your clients. You will then be fine. Outreach goes in 3 levels. So when I work with somebody who's a creative strategist, I say, go to level 1, go to level 2, go to level 3. Again, if you're egotistical and unaware, which I know somebody's watching this video, is it, and I hope that you have a glimpse of awareness to understand this is the case. I say start at level 1 and work all the way to level 3. You cannot jump. You cannot jump the levels, right? If you're playing Pokemon, you got to fight this boss before you fight that boss before you fight that boss. So beat the boss. Just focus on doing it fast. If it pisses you off because you feel like you're going backwards to Upwork or LinkedIn, good. Use that anger as fuel that you're actually probably not as good as you think you are. That's okay. Swallow the pride pill. Be mad at me. Be mad at reality. Be mad at God. But use that anger as fuel to go through this process faster than everyone else so you don't have to worry about it 2 months from now, okay? So let's talk about it. Outreach level 1. This is enough to make $10,000 to $30,000 per month. Mr. Cosman, who made $31,000 a month in December, has only used this process. He doesn't need. I've taught him the other stuff. He doesn't really need it because it's fine. If you just follow what I'm saying, this is enough to get you started. Okay, so the first one for outreach level 1, there's really 2 things you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on platforms, and you're going to focus on basically your warm network, which typically means existing clients. Okay? The platforms will help you to get clients, and then once you have your existing clients, use that to get more clients. This method alone is enough to be completely book solid. Done. You don't even need the other outreach methods. Okay? But let's talk about this. The platforms I recommend are Upwork, LinkedIn, Hiree, and job boards. Okay? Pretty much for all of these, there are different nuances, which we'll cover inside the workshop. But in general, what you want to do is you want to fill out your profile to 100% completion. Again, 100% completion means 100% completion. People always interpret this according to what they want. It's so funny. I can look at anyone's Upwork profile and instantly understand if they are going to make it. By which I mean people will make it, but I can understand someone's mental blocks. Because I will say 100% completion, and they'll do 80% of it. And I'll be like, why didn't you do 100%? And it's like, do you fucking understand English? You want to be a creative strategist and copywriter? Listen to fucking English. 100% completion means 100% completion. I don't care if you're scared to ask for testimonial. I don't care if you're scared to go on videos. I don't care if you don't have a certificate. Figure it the fuck out. Make a video. I don't care if it's ass. Make a video. Certification. Fill it out to 100% completion. Same thing is true on Upwork, LinkedIn, Hiree, and job boards. I don't know. It's like the baseline level of competition is so low that people don't even fill this out to 100% completion. It's embarrassing. So fix it. Do that. Next one is you typically got to bootstrap your profile with 3 views. Again, I have a video on my YouTube channel on like how to do a deeper dive, make $10K a month on Upwork. Just watch that video. It's done. Okay? When your profile is maxed out, anyways, a lot of this stuff is from that video. I recommend just watching that video. But long story short, fill out your profile to 100% completion. Make sure you get a couple good reviews to kind of cook it. Apply to 5 to 10 per day as practice. If you focus on practice, you're not worried about the outcome because you're practicing outreaching to people. It's great. Over-deliver every single time. Ask for good reviews. Get top-rated status. And then you can use things like nuclear VSLs or off-platform applications, which I can't really cover here. Okay? That's for succeeding on platforms. For the warm network, you want to focus on the 4 R's. This basically means referrals, repeat work, retainers, and royalties. Okay, so a referral is basically saying, hey, can you give me a referral? And for that, use a 30-second referral script. I have it in one of the videos on here. I think it's how to be a highly paid creative strategist in 2026 is the name of it. And of course, we'll cover this on our workshop. But the basic idea of the 30-second referral is say, when you're onboarding a client, you say, okay, I got everything I need. Hey, is it okay if we talk about something real quick? And they're like, yeah. And you say, hey, one of the things that I like to talk about all clients is that basically in my business, I'm doing two things. I have to do my acquisition and I have to focus on the skill of performing your project. I want to put as much of my focus as possible into fulfilling for you. And I don't want to spend any of my extra bandwidth or time or energy having to go and hunt for clients, which is why I ask every single person that I work with if they can recommend me at least one or two different people who you know are in other businesses who may need my services. And that really helps me to kind of remove that bottleneck of having to do outreach to work with them, et cetera. Okay, that's one method and one approach. It works for many, many people, and that's an example of how to ask for a referral. You can do the same thing to talk about repeat work, right? Oh, hey, I noticed this. Hey, I noticed this in your funnel. Hey, I noticed this. Or what about the retainer? Hey, I noticed this, and it looks like you need ongoing work. Do you want to just sign up for a retainer? Same thing with royalties, okay? These are more difficult conversations, but if you have these with your clients and you're over-delivering and you're awesome to work with, you are going to have a form of leverage. Boom, you can multiply your clients that way. Okay, outreach level 2. This is where you start doing things like cold email, cold DMs, Dream 100, lumpy mail. Cold email, cold DMs, and like lumpy mail is basically the same thing in a different format. The key thing is to have consistency, good volume, and offer. You also want a lot of personalization. Typically, the sniper approach, especially as a freelancer, is going to work better than the mass approach. You always want to lead with value. So you want to lead with like, hey, I noticed something in your funnel. Hey, I shot you a Loom video. Do you want to see it? Hey, I'll shot you the Loom video. Here it is. Hey, I made you 10 free ads. Hey, here's a compliment. I noticed this, all right? Again, the game changes, so you need to kind of like be aware of what's working and adjust accordingly, but this is very, very powerful. And then follow-up is super, super key. Just follow up. Have a plan, be neutral about it, and follow up. Okay, and then the last level of outreach that also works for people is attending events. This works when you're at a higher level. Producing content, again, works at a higher level. Strategic partnerships, again, works at a higher level. And then running paid ads. Okay, we have people in our programs who've done all of these and gotten success with clients. But my recommendation is just start with this. Get this thing cooking. It's typically enough to get you moving forward. If you need to support it, you can start doing some of these sniper level cold approach, and then you can do outreach stuff on here. What's really cool is we actually have a really great cold email expert who's going to be doing a masterclass. Again, if you get access to the course, which we're talking about, okay? So he's going to do a whole masterclass on this, and we'll be going hella deep on everything on here and giving you tons of scripts and examples of what you need. And then just make a system. Get really fucking good at what you do, get proof that you're really fucking good, and be amazing to work with. And then just have a system for applying to people consistently, and boom. You'll never have to really worry about this thing overall, okay? And that is basically all, okay? Like I said, this is kind of just scratching the surface. This is basically everything that's going to go in the workshop, but I hope you got value from this. I hope it was worth your time and your investment. I know we spent a lot of time. Thanks for putting up with my cough. Let me know in the comments below how this is. This video is going to go bye-bye on February 10th. As long as you kind of, subscribe below on the email list, I will send this document to you. It'll be with a bunch of other ones. I will also take it out on February 10th, including this video as well, but you can get access to this. And again, if you are interested, I do hope that you join us for our workshop. Like I said, this workshop is being sold for $497. It's going to be basically turned into a course. So if you get access to this, you will also get access to the course. That's $2,000. Will be sold for $2,000. There are tons of bots that are going to be in there, and it's over 3 days where we go super in depth. It is live, but you get all the recordings, and it's pretty insanely powerful. I'll actually put this sales letter down in the link below, and you can check it out for yourself and see if it's something that's going to be interesting to you. And that's all. I have tons more planned for this channel, and I appreciate your time and support. Peace.